Hey everyone, and welcome to yet another episode of D&D Horror Stories. In today's episode, we have a tale about a quote-unquote professional dungeon master being annoyed at other people for having fun because they aren't doing it correctly. And then we have a story of that guy ruining a first-time DM's Curse of Strahd run. All of this and more are coming up. But first, Ziggy has a message for you.
Suscribe. Sayonara.
You make a good point there, Ziggy. Anyways, let's get into these stories. You know something is serious when someone pulls out their gaming credentials. By Reddit user MVQF. This is going to be on the more absurd side rather than horror, but here we go. I'm part of a huge Discord server that is all about tabletop RPGs, a HUD-defined games of sorts. It's so big that it's not uncommon for ads for campaigns there to be filled within an hour or so. Now, as per usual, the mods there have a tendency of being assholes, because they can. This is where the person who I'm referring to at the title comes in. Let's call her Tamara, fake name obviously. I'm starting to dip my feet in the DM shoes after years of being a player. It's a bit harder than it appeared to be, but I have fantastic players that, even if I screw up the intricacies of the hobby, such as combat and balancing issues, they more than enjoy the campaigns that I DM. Heck, one of them even writes a diary in character. It's their fancy way of keeping notes. Also memes galore in regards to the occurrences. One of these slip-ups happened when I made an enemy encounter at sea. I accidentally spawned too many enemies at a time, and noticed the turns would take forever to roll. So at the moment, I decided to spawn in a huge sea creature to scare off the enemies. Off the top of my head, I spawned a kraken. The party's objective was to keep the kraken at bay by any means necessary until they reached shallow waters, a few miles or turns from there. Now, when I told this tale to the server, as you know, people usually do, I described that one player was slapped off deck into the ocean by one of its attacks as collateral damage. Tamara then proceeded to ask, Tamara, please tell me you killed the character. Me, no. Tamara, then you're garbage as a DM. She then proceeded to list N reasons as to why this whole situation should be a TPK, and that I did the encounter wrong because of the Kraken's divine status, and that its intelligence is higher than the whole party combined, so I shouldn't be playing it as an irrational animal, etc., etc. Even when I said the setting of my campaign has different rules, and that my games are more casual and character-driven, she doubled down and added later, Tamara, it's thanks to stupid DMs like you that we, the not stupid DMs, get stupid players at our tables who think they can take on a Tarrasque or Ancient Dragon at level 1, or that can't even roll HP gains for every level up. And a whole lot of nothings I can't bother to remember. This is where it would be left, but the thing about one of my campaigns is that I'm doing a system of my own based on Fire Emblem. It's honestly a hot mess, but hey, my players are having fun with it and the story so far. However, due to being a homemade system, it's open to exploits, and in this campaign, I'm dealing with a min-maxer for the first time. The player is great, but part of me fears that him stomping a lot of the rolls may intimidate the players, and went to the server to ask the DMs there how to deal with this. While I received some nice tips, like using situations where his min was the key to success, or have a specific type of enemy face him, alongside systems that better accommodate my vision for the campaign. Tamara wasn't so helpful. Here are the highlights of her responses when I presented my problems. You don't do a living world. Then no wonder you're having this sort of problem, without telling me how to better do this living world. Who told you to make your own system? You deserve everything bad happening at your table. The only thing moderation there hates more than handmade systems is Ordum Paranormal. Again, it's thanks to stupid DMs like you that we have to deal with stupid players. After that, I kind of snapped and told her to shove it, because I play my games to have fun, to help others have fun, that she was taking tabletop RPGs too seriously. After that, the unexpected happened. She, no joke, pulled off her quote-unquote gaming credentials to justify why she takes it seriously. Like her participating and giving 5 speeches when it comes to tabletop RPGs. She's studying tabletop design, being a professional narrator and cartographer, etc., etc. I just said that this still doesn't justify her taking it too seriously, and acting like her way of playing is the right way to play it, and the second round of responses arrived. Yes, dear, I take it seriously because this is my job, and I have a reputation to live up to, only for me to see stupid and retarded people like you to remind me that this generation is making tabletop RPGs worse by the day. Everything that is consumed is garbage. Everything that is created is garbage. And then people like you come in thinking I don't have fun with something serious. There's no more autistic, retarded, and out-of-touch argument than RPGs are meant to be fun. When your group kills dragons like goblins, and the players think that this is normal and impose that on other games, playing zoos instead of actual deep characters and a bunch of wannabe anime heroes. I take it seriously because I want the Brazilian tabletop RPG scenario to grow and not go down the drain with cocksuckers of D&D 5e, Jambo, it's an RPG system publisher, and Cellbit, a YouTuber who created Ordem Paranormal. Note: I have autism. Everyone on the server, including Tamara, knows that I have autism, so her using retarded and autistic as offenses to my argument was deliberate. After this whole manifesto dump and her fuming, I decided to take a step back and leave it at that. I didn't want to risk getting a ban and not being able to play my future Fist of the North Star and other campaigns with fellow Brazilians. I'm already kind of not interacting there, mostly just posting some stuff to avoid being banned for being a ghost member. I don't know how to end this tale other than I'm a firm believer in the saying I once heard. The only bad way to play D&D, and tabletop RPGs in general, is when the players, and the DM, aren't having fun. So, just have fun in your games, folks. TLDR, veteran DM brings her gaming credentials as a DM and has a meltdown over me DMing in a more casual manner, and says that I'm part of what's ruining tabletop RPGs. Gatekeeping. OP is completely right. If you and the other players playing a tabletop RPG are having fun, then that's all that matters in the long run. Tamara reminds me of that meme where a lot of people are sitting around a TV and having fun playing a video game, and then there's that one person standing behind them all telling them that it's stupid. Then for her to use those insults to OP when she knows full well that they're on the spectrum just adds a rotten cherry on top of her probably misshapen head. Well, that's at least how I picture her in my mind. I hope OP and their group are still having fun playing how they want. And if Tamara somehow, through the power of the universe, sees this video, cope and seethe, bitch. Cope and seethe. Anyway, let's move on. Am I the asshole for calling out a player? Submitted to the d&Ddoge subreddit by Reddit user HelpfulBug4982. Hello everyone. This just happened a few days ago, and I'm still kinda torn by it. Spoilers for Curse of Strahd below. During a particularly long surge of COVID in my country, I took D&D as a hobby, and have been playing ever since. Having heard that Curse of Strahd is a good module, I made a post on looking for game, recruiting for players, and would soon form a group. The cast includes our DM, a veteran with lots of experience with Curse of Strahd, both as a DM and a player. Bard, me, playing a Yuan-Ti Bard. Most party mates would describe me as carrying most combat sessions. Rogue, a tiefling rogue, the first jokester of the group. Very chill and very humorous, but can be serious when times call for it. Artificer, Gem Dragonborn Artificer, would join later in the game, a serious player and kind of a min-maxer, but not in a bad way. Cleric, Kobold Cleric, serious role player, though would have to leave the campaign due to in-real-life stuff. And finally, Ranger, our problem player, even though I don't really want to call him that way. He was playing a Kenku Ranger. It was apparent from the beginning that he was a jokester, since despite playing a ranger and having the whole party helping him make his character, he insisted on having a negative wisdom and picked spells for wacky hijinks instead of actual combat practicality. As soon as we began the game, he had acted rather disruptive, jumping headfirst into obvious traps, like the dream pastries, despite being warned in and out of character that that was a bad idea. Attacking Doru by grappling him using his 8 decks and trying to liberate the Vistani's chicken coop into a Barovian knight. He would also act disrespectfully to NPCs, frequently RPing his character, either vomiting out coins and other objects, or just straight up vomiting normally on shopkeepers' floors. Then, when our DM is busy with other players, he would send pictures of hairless rodents in the chat. What? These we mostly ignored, since it's just harmless fun, and he seemed like a kid, so we didn't blame him. Perhaps that's why he took it upon himself to escalate the antics, especially after we made it to Valakai. When we approached the city, since we're a group of non-humans, the guards all acted suspicious. As my bard was trying to convince them to let us in, I mentioned that we were tricked by a you-know-who. The guards showed concerns and sympathy, and asked in a hushed tone to be certain. When you said you-know-who, do you mean? Right at that point, the ranger blurted out, "Who do you think, Voldemort? Yes, she meant Strahd," which immediately made the guards super uneasy, and we needed a persuasion roll so that we can get in. On the first day in Valakai, he continues to roleplay vomiting in front of various shops and establishments while we were trying to get our footing. The cleric and I both asked him to stop, and he did for just a while. But then, after selling his name away for arrows, he started breakdancing on the streets of Valakai, while Arena got kidnapped and the rest of the party chased after her to their burgomaster's mansion. This is the session where the artificer joined the party, and cleric had to leave the campaign. For that entire session, there is nothing we can do without metagaming for the ranger, so that he would have things to do. So, while we explore the mansion, he just sits there with his mic off, and occasionally sends pictures of naked mole rats or chinchillas in the chat. These were ignored in the heat of the moment. By the time we escaped the mansion with Irina, and a whole squadron of guards chasing us, he was still breakdancing on the street, and only agreed to regroup, since he metagamed and knew that we were going to meet up at a place that his character knew vaguely. The last 2 sessions that he was with us were, sadly, particularly irritating. From within our hideout, Artificer suggested that we lure Isaac out into an abandoned alley, using my bard's illusion magic and Ranger's voice-changing ability, while he and the rogue pincer the bodyguard. While me and Rogue were adding to the overall plan, Ranger insisted that he can ambush him on his own in an outhouse. When asked how to actually get him into the outhouse so he can do that, Ranger told me to spike his drink with laxatives, which I promptly denied. When it was time to execute the plan, the Ranger still insisted to hide in the outhouse nearby, putting the execution of the entire plan on my shoulder, which I pulled off with extreme difficulty, and the DM had to rule that minor illusion can change somebody's voice. And so, combat begins, with only 3 of us against Isaac and 4 guards, while the Ranger is still in the outhouse, some 100 feet away from all the fighting. I got down to 3 HP after 3 turns, while the rogue is completely dried of spell slots. To make matters worse, we drove Isaac running a bit too hard, and now he could potentially be lost into the crowd outside, or call in more guards. Only now did the Ranger make his move, tumbling out of the outhouse and takes 2 shots, both of which missed. The entire party, sans Ranger and Rogue because cutting action, had to risk attack of opportunities in order to chase down Isaac and finally kill him, but not without the entirety of Valakai as witnesses. As the DM called for a break, we took the opportunity to gently tell the Ranger that maybe he should cooperate more, with the rogue pointing out that I wouldn't have had to take so many attacks if he was around to help. Then we also told him about how he shouldn't interrupt us when we were making plans, and how sometimes it needs to be taken seriously. Immediately, he went off on us, saying that he was young, inexperienced, and has ADD, and that's the reason why he has problems following instructions or cooperating. I told him that I also have some mental complications, but then he blew up on me about how that's not the same, and that I'm older than him, so I can't compare. Without giving us a chance to try and explain ourselves, he disconnects from the call and left the server in the middle of the game. So, that's my story. Users of Reddit, am I the asshole? Nope, you are not. It sounds like you guys put up with that player's shenanigans for far longer than most people would have. I wouldn't feel bad that he quit over the criticism. If anything, I would celebrate. The trash took itself out. Plus, it was yet another person using a mental health issue as an excuse to be shitty. I have ADD, and I don't go around throwing up on people's floors. Though, I guess that's just me. Anyway, before we get into the final story, I must ask that if you're enjoying the video, that you consider giving it a like, as it does go a long way to help the channel grow. And to help persuade you, here is a Simba Mega Close-Up. Did it work? Anyways, let's get into the final story of the day. Treadmilling, Worse Than Railroading, by Anonymous. I don't know if there's already a word for the thing I'm trying to describe, so I'm going to refer to it as treadmilling, which is when a DM pads out a session with absolute nothingness and removes you from any sense of progress, just to force you to meander through repeating scenery. This is something my DM since 2017 has done many times throughout the campaign, getting so bad at one point that I wrote a green text about it that got over 10,000 points. In this case, he was explicitly retconning the depth of the pit every time the party came up with a way to safely traverse to the bottom. Another time, he put us in an explicitly magic-sized changing hallway with no way out, and so he just decided that after an hour of describing the same stretch of hallway over and over, he was finally ready to let us out. There was also a time we tried to use a spell to scout an area to try and figure out whether or not the plot was up in a certain flying tower, and he asked the player who cast it what the range of the spell was, and it was 1 mile, and then said that the tower was, quote, a little higher than that. What's really weird to me is that in situations like these, while we're on the treadmill, the DM auto-resolves combat, if there is any, instead of letting us play it out, so it's not like he's trying to pad for time. If you were trying to pad for time, then allowing us to play out the narratively pointless random encounters would obviously be a far better way to accomplish that than retconning travel distances and describing the same empty scenery over and over. What's really got my jimmies in a good old-fashioned rustle is that on one of the many occasions I tried to politely discuss this with the DM in a private chat, they defended the treadmill by saying, I have a story I want to tell. But as I hope you'll agree, that's fucking stupid. They're not telling a story. An hour of literally nothing happening but walking through a forest and changing his mind about distances isn't a story. What's worse, most of these occasions of treadmilling have specifically been implemented to kill our narrative momentum when we were specifically trying to follow his story. We were trying to get on the rails, and he took us off the rails in order to put us on this treadmill. What's even worse than that is recently, I finally got the whole group involved, and the DM then defended the treadmill by saying that it was somehow intrinsically necessary as a product of us choosing our short-term goals, instead of letting him choose them for us. Obviously, that's a crock of shit, but we were supposed to have sorted this out when the current arc of the campaign started. We had an agreement that we'd give him the largest possible heads up for what our party's intentions were for the immediate future, so he could prep accordingly. His idea, not ours. But he keeps actively going out of his way to break the agreements he comes up with regarding anything to do with communication. And I've just absolutely had it up to here, man. I get treadmilled enough in real life when it comes to my career and education. I don't need this fucking bullshit in my escapism. This is the final chance. The campaign has mostly been fun, despite the DM's fetish for destroying our sense of narrative agency. But now, he's professed an official solution to the treadmill problem allowed to our whole group, and if he doesn't stick to it, then I'm out. No communication, no heads up, no attempt to be civil. If I even catch the faintest whiff of repeating scenery from here on in, I'm just leaving every group chat without a word. End of rant. Sorry for wasting space on your screen. Yeah, that is probably the best course of action at this point. Playing in a game where nothing happens for hours on end just doesn't sound like fun, and D&D is supposed to be, well, fun. Honestly, it just sounds like that DM just doesn't do any prep. But then why hand-wave battles when they do happen? If anything, that is a DM's out for not having any prep done. Just throw a few baddies at the party. A commenter on the post mentioned that perhaps the DM was doing prep in the middle of the battle, and maybe that's why it was so lackluster, so that also could be the reason. Hopefully, things do change for OP's game, and they don't have to leave. Though I would say, if they do decide to go, I still wouldn't ghost the DM. At least tell them the reason why you're leaving. Have you ever had another player or DM pull rank to tell you that you're playing the game wrong? If so, and would like your story to be shared on the channel, feel free to post it in the comments, on the d&Ddoge subreddit, or even just at me on Twitter. As always, I appreciate all of you, and remember, if everyone is having fun, that's all that matters. Until next time.